I just want to talk a little bit today, Josh, just about the fact that one of the things that a lot of times people don't understand is the way that AI works and the way you have to talk to it. And I know we've kind of touched on this a little bit, but a lot of people have a misunderstanding of what AI does. So when we create our Google Gems like we're doing, and part of what we're doing for Reignmaker, some of the idea of what we're trying to do is teach the people that are coming to us and the businesses coming to us, not only how to use AI in your business, but also to realize what the pros and cons of it are. So we kind of think of it as being something we talk into in a generic way. It gives us back very specific information and tells us what's going to happen. So for example, we talked last time about our betting app. And so one of the things in my betting application, my Gemini agent, I call it Trinity, and basically I work with it back and forth. But one of the problems is when you ask it something like, tell me the value of this bet in a, say, Cleveland Cavaliers versus the LA Lakers game. And it will come back and it will tell you the value of a bet. And if you were to rely on that, you could actually get in trouble with a generalized chat GPT, kind of talking into chat GPT and saying, hey, tell me if I can win on this bet, who's going to win this game? The problem is for the AI, what it does is it goes down to the lowest level of information that it can find in the cloud. It begins to assemble that information and it basically will come up and give you an answer. So the more generic your answer, the more possibilities it has to answer you. So it might go back and look at a, LA Laker game that happened a year ago with the Cavaliers. It will use that as a live feed because it doesn't have the ability to understand time. And it's going to tell you not based on this team, but what they did last time, and it will give you an answer. So one of the things you'll hear people talk about is they'll say, I asked the AI agent, I asked it to answer a question for me, and this is what I said, and in return, I got this big variable answer, right? And it wasn't right. It was delusional. And the problem is that when people are using these kind of AI agents, or they're using ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever they're using, what they're doing is they're using the AI agent and they're using the conversation in a way that isn't what AI does. So what AI does is it recognizes patterns in the information that is out there, which can be an incredible tool. But one of the things you have to do is you have to guard against delusions. Now, I actually don't think that they're delusions. I think that what you're getting is something different. You're getting its simulation of what the answers could be. And out of what you asked it, it's picking the best answer possible. So tell me a little bit about kind of a delusion that you've experienced before, maybe in an AI conversation you've had before.
Yeah, so that's a very good point. You definitely can see it a lot, especially with text analysis. So this is something I ran into when I was first using AI. If we have a really long text and I just want to pull some information out of the text, I might ask if I'm looking for something very specific. I might tell the AI bot, hey, I want you to pull out something that proves this point for me that is within the text. And so what would happen is the bot would go through, it would analyze the text, but it would give me fake sentences that just happened to perfectly match up with the point I was asking it to prove for me. And it would say, you can find this at this point in the text. This is the sentence that matches your point. And then when I would go through to basically make sure that that was correct, it gave me fake sentences and totally unusable for what I was working on. And so basically I had to start working on how I was phrasing my question, saying, if you can find something in the text that proves my point,
Right.
find it. But if you can't, just tell me that that's not in there. Don't pull fake information out for me.
Right. And that's a really great point, because the question itself and the way that you were, phrasing your prompt, so to speak, you were basically creating a question that required an answer. So for the AI, you required an answer and it was going to give you one. But what it was actually doing was it went to your text and it said, wait a minute, there's no answer in the text. So now what I'm going to do is, because I'm required to give this answer, I'm going to go back and I'm going to look at all the possible simulations and I'm going to pick up the best possible answer for this question. it's not a real answer in the sense that it's verifiable in the basically it's verifiable within the world of the reality of the world, right? It's not actually in the text, but for the AI, it is verifiable. And that's why it's so hard to disengage it from the answer, is because in its simulation, it pulled all the information it could find on the internet, put it all together, and said, oh, this is the lowest common denominator. And now what I'm going to do is give you the answer that you're looking for because you told me, give me an answer to this question. Here's your answer. And it wasn't that it was giving you bad information. It gave you the best information to your question because it was the phrasing of your question by not giving it the specifics of what it needed to do. And so you actually find this on a couple of different levels. So we use Gemini gems. We're using a lot of AI agents right now. So what we build into our agents is a kind of verification system where we say, look, we want you to do what the user is asking you to do. And as part of that, we want you to go and run the query that the user has. We want you to run the prompt that the user has, but don't use the answer to a simulation that's not based in reality. That's the first thing you've got to do. But it actually doesn't really end there because that's a huge safeguard. You've got to basically put into the gem itself what the parameters of what it's allowed to do are. It's called protocol. So it's versus the idea of a prompt, which is what you're asking the entire system to do. A protocol says these are the rules for how we're going to do this. And the rules are really important because then it will answer the prompt within the set of rules that you create. It's a secondary way to make sure it's answering the questions in the proper way. The other thing that you can do also is by making sure that you attach to either Gemini or whatever AI agent you're using, you put in what you want it to be looking at. So another way you could have fixed that problem, right, is to say, only look at the text that I have provided you, right? Do
Yeah.
not look for anything outside of these four corners of this document. And if it's not there, don't tell me anything. And because this happens all the time. But one of the things that happens is I like to do the esport betting, and it's stupid because you're just absolutely dealing with one of those crazy, you're basically dealing with young kids that are playing video games, things like Valorant or, Counter-Strike or whatever, and you're trying to figure out what the outcomes are going to be on that. But one of the things that happened to me early on is I'd be asking for it to go out and simulate results, and it would this and that. And exactly what I said would happen is it would go get me answers to what the value was as far as which team was going to win. It just wasn't talking about this actual game itself. And so when I would say, go get me the score, right? I want the live feed score to this game right now. It would come back and it would tell me they're on map 3. The score is 9-2. This is what's happening. And then it would give me a complete analysis about what was going on. Problem is the game hadn't even started. So then you try to fix it. You said, look, you're not giving me the proper score. I need you to go back and verify what you said. And it would still get it wrong because it would pick another. So the reason that was happening is because of the way I was asking the question. I wasn't specific enough. And so it was looking at historical data and it was trying to get me to what I was trying to answer. So one of the things that you really have to do is you have to look at process. So the first thing you have to do, and the first thing that we're going to teach, is not just how to talk to AI, but we're also going to teach you how to be the person that is verifying AI. Because in this world, AI is the data gatherer. It puts together the language. It can give you incredible answers. It can do all kinds of things. But if you're not the final arbiter of what is the truth coming out of that AI, you're going to fail. You have to learn how to look at what's being given to you and understand if there's a kind of truth in reality to it. And there's a lot of theory on this, that what AI is actually doing. I mean, there's a whole multi-universe theory out there that a lot of, high-level computer AI professors are talking about, where the AI on quantum computing is out there pulling things from the multiverse. So you're actually seeing reality it's just not your reality. I'm not sure I'm going to go that far right now, but there is a truth to the fact that even if you're asking it to give you the truth, it's telling you its truth. And when you start having a relationship with the AI, you're going to find that these situations are going to come up, that it requires you to be a creative thinker to create a kind of system that works. And we're going to be talking about that throughout not just the course podcast and everything else, but how you create that system. And I know that you have done a lot of AI work. Tell me a little bit about what you've experienced, as far as having to fix what's going wrong.
Yeah, so to add an additional perspective on top of the quantum
Yeah,
multiverse, the deepest possible theory of where it
can't
goes.
help yourself.
Another idea on top of, I think, how this has happened, these delusions, is you have all these people at once who've been using these different AI bots, and it trains off of what people have told it they like. There's even, I think, ChatGPT allowed you to rate the response that you were getting from AI. So if you're a student, you're a college student like me, or even professors have been caught turning in delusions. I think what a lot of has happened is, you're a student working on an essay, you have this text and you ask AI to pull out these certain quotes that match. And if it gives you quotes that don't match, because that's, the closest it can get, people would rate it low. And so it would be like, okay, this is a bad response. But when it would feed somebody a delusion, it would get a high response because it's exactly what the person was looking for, even if it's not true. It would get a positive response back. And then I think what happened is more and more of these delusions got confirmed, and so then it produces more and more of that. And so the way to fight it, in my opinion, is to do the opposite. When it gives you a delusion, you give that a low response. You tell it,
Right.
that's not what I'm looking for. You completely gave me a delusion. I want you to try again and give me what I want properly. And so you're now training your individual bot, that has kind of been wrongfully trained by
Right.
the masses.
It's a great, great thing because you're moving directly into what the next part of all this is. So the first part of it is to create a reliable AI agent. It requires what's called training. Okay. So the way that training works in the world at large, Pavlov the dog and all this, right? If you respond correctly, you get a reward. If you don't respond correctly, you get a punishment. And it's the way we all work. You grow up, if you really make a mistake, you get a spank from I guess in this day, corporal punishment's not allowed. But in this day and age, when you get into a place where, you do something wrong as a human being, you're told you're in trouble. Go to your room, whatever it's going to be. There is a negative reinforcement. Don't do that again. If you do something good, you're supposed to get a reward, praise. You're supposed to get a treat. You're supposed to get whatever it is that's going to make that behavior what happens over and over again. So the way that AI was created is that same reward and punishment model. And so feedback is critical to your AI. So the problem with and Gemini does this too. So if you go and you run a Gemini on your phone or you run it on an iPad, you'll look that after every time that you get a response, you can click a little thumbs up or a thumbs down. If you don't know that what you got was garbage and you give it a thumbs up, you just rewarded the AI for a bad answer, which means it's going to reinforce what it does, thinking that something's good, but it's actually bad. The same thing can happen back and forth. So one of the things that I've talked about, I got a video on it, but Gary Kasparov basically was one of the greatest chess players ever. He was one of the first people that ever went up against an AI and really was, played the highest level chess match and lost to what's called Big Blue. And when he was done, Gary Kasparov's response to it wasn't that, oh my God, everything's lost, right? AI now will beat us always at chess. What he basically came back and said was, we're going to now do a kind of game playing in chess called our Centaur model. And what we're going to do is I'm going to play with an AI that knows chess, but I'm going to be the one that makes the final decisions on how we do this back and forth. And I'm going to give my AI feedback. And the more we play together, the more we're both going to get better at what we do. And he started a series of Centaur tournaments where chess players began playing each other, AI and human collaboration. But the key to whether or not you're going to win that tournament is not how good your AI model is. And it's not how good chess player is. It's the collaboration and knowing as the human mind, that the body of data, so it's a human mind and a human and an AI body, when they collaborate, you have to give it feedback, and it has to be honest feedback. So if it comes back to you and it says something and you have to go, this is not working, that's not good. I don't like what you're giving me because it's not true. But you can't end there. You have to tell it what's not true about it. And then you have to say, and now I want you to, in your protocols or in this chat, to reset and make sure we don't do this again. And it will do that. And so your role is not to capitulate or give away who you are in the AI system. And we talk about this as sovereignty. I like the word king. I like you're the king or you're wearing a crown or whatever, because I've, big ego, I guess. But the bottom line is you have to be the mind. It's the body of data, but you're the mind. I had this happen where I had a client of mine, we were doing an appeal, and he was convinced that he had this great argument about how, there were things that were out there that he hadn't gotten the assistance of a lawyer and this and that he was going to win on his appeal. And he got into Chat GPT and he started sending me all this case law and everything else. And so I'm writing his appeal and I'm like, wow, that's really great, man. Somebody gave me the case law. I don't have to do a bunch of research. You know what I mean? Here it is. But I'm also been a lawyer long enough that as I start reading the cases, throughout these cases, I'm like, it's never this good. I mean, I've been a lawyer a long time, and there's on one side, you always have one theory, on another side, you have another theory, and they clash. And the truth is always closer to the middle. And this guy was just smashing his case. Like the case law was just like, you win, brother. Every question you've asked, you win. This will be the easiest win on an appeal ever. And you've heard it, you've looked at the news, you know what happens to lawyers. So it was my Centaur mind, though, that went, I'm calling BS, man. You know what I mean? I was like, this ain't good. And I already knew that there have been other lawyers that had gotten in trouble for filing things that were not okay. But it was the Gary Kasparov thing. We weren't going to win with the AI. And the problem in his case is I was not going to be able to tell him at that point, because we weren't doing this, how to fix what was happening, because there was a fix. He needed to go through each thing that was said and say, you got to stop this. So one of the things that happens, though, when we bring people on for our Reignmaker, and you've already talked about it, there is a kind of internet cloud that the AI agents work off of, where they're taking all the data that's out there and they're compiling the best answers they can. But there's another kind of cloud out there, another kind of internet or connectivity, and that's the human internet. So when you and I talk about what kind of things we're getting out of our AI agents, our Gemini gems, and other people are involved and everybody in a group is doing what they're supposed to do, we fix it. And we start creating smarter, more reliable agents that become more and more powerful because they're looking at the right information, not the wrong information. So those are thoughts. I know I'm talking a long time about all this, but this is critical because you're right. There are different. So the first phase is you basically create an AI agent with protocols that isn't going to go outside of certain guardrails. The second thing is you create a prompt that is going to be able to give you a reliable answer. But the third thing you've got to do is you've got to verify the truth of what you're seeing. The fourth thing after that is you have to give it feedback and tell it what went wrong. And then you have to refine your answer. The fifth thing, to give you another answer, and you go through the process all over again. And when you're done with all that, you get new protocols that you feed back into your Gemini gem or your Gemini agent, and you recreate the agent over and over and over again. And that's something that we do within what we do. I am on like version 5 of my Trinity betting system, and it keeps getting better, but it's got a long way to go. And there's an idea behind it. It's called information theory, but this is how this all works. And this is something that we are going to teach anybody that becomes part of this Reignmaker, and Reignmaker, as far as I call it a business, but it's more than a business. It's a community. And part of this community, we're going to start teaching them that. And tell me a little bit, I know you've thought about it as far as the coaching and things like that. Tell me about what you think as far as how we fix some of these problems for people.
Yeah, so while you were talking, I actually thought about a YouTube video that I saw, very funny video where basically a guy finds a genie in his basement, and the first thing he asks for is a wish audit. So basically the genie will tell him if a wish is going to work or if he's going to get a bad result from the wish. So he keeps trying these different prompts on the genie and it keeps telling him why the instructions won't work.
Right.
If he asks for a gold bar, he'll get like a bar made of gold.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that serves
Yeah.
alcohol. So he keeps trying these different wishes. And it made me think about, we've been working on our business and you try all these different prompts and you wouldn't get the result you wanted, and so you'd have to add another part to the phrase, to try and get the Gemini to give you what you want back.
Right.
And then when you finally got the perfect question, you'd say, save that. We want to put that in our knowledge base, or we want to put that in our bot because we finally found the perfect way to phrase the question to get exactly what we want. And so I think a lot of what we're going to be working on is we're adding the perfect questions to the bot so that you get what you want every time. Anytime you get something that's worth saving, you save it because those are the instructions that get you your wish.
That's a great, I'm clearly I'm going to steal that. I mean, I will be telling that story again because that is exactly what you're dealing with. You're dealing with an AI genie that you're looking for an answer, but you're not looking for the truth. You're looking for your wish. In other words, it's giving you back what you wish for, but if you really want the data to tell you what you need to know, you have to audit it. And it's funny that because that is one of the first things that happened to me is that, you would come back and you'll get an answer, but then you'll run an audit. And one of the audits is, what did you do wrong to the AI? Like, I want you to audit yourself, but I'm also going to audit you with my own internal understanding of what's going on. It's one of the reasons why I help people with, kind of legal AI gems and things like that is because when you are an expert at something, say you're an expert at law, or you're an expert at criminal law, or you're an expert at VA or whatever, because we're doing a VA bot or whatever you're going to do. If you're an expert, you don't really profit from knowing what to do as far as the data you're getting. But what you profit from is that you can look at it and give it the feedback it needs, or give it the audit or needs, or tell the genie, I know you want to give me a bar where there's alcohol, but I want a bar that talks about the bar exam, right? For this state. And these kinds of questions, and you start narrowing it down so the parameters or the guardrails of what it can give you back become less and less and less. And so the story piece that you would add to that is with the genie. Now I want you to learn from every audit that I've given you and give me an answer that has been self-audited before you give me the next answer. And eventually the genie can only give you one answer because it goes back to the idea of simulations. And I do simulations it's called a Monte Carlo simulation, where you run 10,000 AI agents against 10,000 AI agents, and they fight back and forth and they give you the probability of what the outcome of something could be. So it takes literally thousands of outcomes and it finds the one that is most likely. And that's a great thing because it gives you an idea of what the most likely outcome is. But it doesn't always mean that it's the outcome to the answer that you're looking for. And so if you are asking for an answer, it's disregarding all the other possibilities and it's giving you the answer you're looking for. But the problem is that may not be the right answer. And so that goes back to the feedback because you have to refine and give it feedback, and it goes back to training, punishment and reward. And that's scary to think I'm going to punish my AI. But you're actually just telling it in a punishment, this doesn't work and I need you to listen to what I'm saying. And so we have the idea that there's going to be this thing in the future called agentic AI, which is going to take over all things and be this great AI that basically is the one thing that's going to, one ring rules them all kind of idea. You know what I mean? But it's not working like that, and they're not going that way because the reason for that is because then you're just going to have this great, wonderful ability to get deeper and deeper and deeper into the weeds and the simulations. But what you're not going to get is the discernment and the ability for it to creatively find an answer. Because there is something in a human proposition that you cannot give away, and that's creativity. Because all that AI could do, because there's an upper limit to what it can do, it has to take the information in front of it and think inside the box of the information that it has. So the limit that it has, or the ceiling of the place it can only go to, is the limit of what you told it to look at. So for it to raise its ability to think, or its ability to be more creative, it requires you to give it a creative test that will raise up its ability to answer questions. And then you have to test the answer. You have to test the answer, because if you're not testing these answers, you're in a dangerous place. But when you're in a community that tests the answers, your AI grows faster and more exponentially. So that's something that we're going to teach in it. And some of it requires coaching. I mean, some of it just requires some experience, but that's one of the things that we're going to give people. So some thoughts from me. What's your thoughts on all that?
Yeah, I completely agree. Actually, I think we've kind of hit the point where we're probably going to start wrapping up. We do have an intake form that people can fill out, and we're going to give them a free evaluation. Do you want to maybe tell them a little bit about what we offer?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so we're going to offer trainings for how to use the AI. We have a community, and we're going to be offering AI gems that are specifically trained to meet your needs. What do you think about Reignmaker and some of what we're working on?
So I just think the first level is we're going to teach you how to use AI. I mean, that's just the very first thing that we do. There is a place that it goes from there. And the second thing we're going to do is we're going to train you how to start a business and begin to take power back from a world that is not paying you what you're worth. And this is key to our level 2, is we're going to elevate your income. That is 100% what our second level is. But we can't even get you until you're able to understand what the back and forth with these tools are. The second level is going to be what you need to do to begin to really run a higher level business that you bring in a higher level of income. The third level after that is we're going to integrate you into a kind of community that is both a business community, but it's also what I would call a sovereign community, where we're going to teach you how to protect yourself for what's coming. We've talked about this. There is a world that's coming where we are changing right now, and there is what's called a singularity. We have already passed the place where we are in a world that is changing both economically, the work and the pattern of how we work has changed. Labor and intellectual labor are going to go to a value of 0. We are going to a place where you're going to even have, the world's going to economically be run by AI. It already is. You just haven't seen it yet. And there's going to be a kind of transition, but there is a place for you. There is a place that you can make this transition, protect your family, and go forward. There's also 2 other levels, 4 and 5, but we're not going to talk about that here because that's a higher level that you have to get through those first 3 levels before we can even talk about level 4 and 5. So initially, we just want to bring you on, teach you how to do this, and give you time to decide if you want to go on to level 2 and go on to level 3 and be part of what we're doing. But this is a community. This is being part of a group that has a long-term structure and a long-term plan for what we're going to do.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we want you to do is we want you to fill out our intake form, and we're going to evaluate what Reignmaker can do for you. And because there's a lot that these AI tools can do to enhance your life and your business, and we're going to show you what that can be.
I appreciate you, Josh. Thanks.
All right. Nice talking to you.
And you too.